know that we are going to be recording this so that we can put it on the website afterwards. So if there's anything that you want to talk about after or offline, please let me know, and I am happy to connect with you offline. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and introduce one of our volunteers, Rob Fagan, who has been with us really since the beginning of our volunteer program, as well as Marco Johnson, who's also been with us since the beginning. What we've been doing on our end is working to build our volunteer core and letting your peers and the people that are living in your community really reach out and present to you. So while we're always here in the background, I don't want to steal the thunder of our volunteers, because I can talk to you every month, or you can see your peers presenting to you. So a lot of our volunteers, they are here because they either love emergencies or they really love hanging out with me. I'm gonna guess it's the emergencies, but they keep coming back, so I must be doing something right. So without further ado, I will go ahead and pass it over to Rob and take it away.
Oh, thank you so much. And by the way, that it's both reasons, Courtney. We love emergency preparedness and we love you. That's why we're all here. So thank you very much, everybody. It is a real pleasure to be with everybody this evening. Thank you so much for attending. My name is Rob Fagan, and as Courtney mentioned, I've been a volunteer with our organization for a few years now. And it's just a really, really important conversation that we have this evening about, one little bit at a time becoming better prepared in our communities for all forms of emergencies and things that happen. Tonight, we're going to have 2 or 3 different training modules, and then we'll tell you what's next in the program as we, build this out. And, as COVID abates a little bit, we have every hope in the not too distant future of doing things more in person. But I think we've also all learned that we can also do lots and lots that's very useful online, like this evening. Courtney, if you would, next slide. Great. So we're going to increase our awareness this evening of a lot of things. We'll talk about emergencies in general and how we respond to them, how we recover them, and more importantly, for our conversation this evening, how we prepare for them, and then how we can help our neighborhoods and our organizations also mitigate and maybe even completely prevent some of the disasters and emergencies that we face here in Fairfax County. Next slide, Courtney. And so again, this is a 3-module overview. Our first module will be about the Fairfax County Strategic Plan. And then myself and others will go into the threats and hazards that we face in Fairfax County, focusing specifically on flooding, and then also preparing for emergencies writ large and in general. And I would like to encourage folks to use the chat room to ask questions. And also, if you want to be part of the conversation, I really, really encourage people to come off of mic and just immediately ask the question. There's no reason to wait or let the conversation pass, and whatever's on your mind. If myself, Marco, Courtney, or anyone else in the room can attend to what you're thinking about, we'd be happy to do so. Next slide, please, Courtney. Now, I understand, Lori, that you're going to talk about our Fairfax County Strategic Plan. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
If you're good with it, I'll go ahead and share screens. I'm toggling between a few, so it may just take me a hot second to be. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, hold on. Okay, try now.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome.
Screen 2, and I don't forget to share sound because I have a short video. All right, can everybody see?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Let me just get it so I can see folks too. It always helps to talk to someone. Okay, as I said, my name is Lori Epp. I'm the Countywide Strategic Plan Communications Manager. And thanks for having me tonight. I was just actually looking at the plan, and emergency management, emergency services really comes up during the safety and security community outcome area in a couple of spots. And in fact, after having COVID go through, makes me think of you guys a lot. So we'll touch on a little bit of that in a bit, but we'll just kind of get started with what the plan is. And by all means, just like you said, you're welcome to interrupt during if you have any questions, or I'm happy to take questions at the end of the presentation. And better yet, I also have my contact information there. So anybody is welcome and encouraged to really reach out with questions. To kick it off, just as a quick background too, the strategic plan is coordinated internally through the Department of Management and Budget. We collaborate really closely with every other department throughout the county, as well as the county executive's office. And that's especially important as we work closely with one Fairfax team as well, which is the work that all of us are really collectively undertaking to advance the county's policy on racial and social equity that I'm sure many of you have heard about, if not attended a presentation on. The strategic plan plays a really key role in operationalizing the work that is happening through that policy as well. So just a quick background. I'll give you more of a background specifically on the actual strategic plan and how it was developed as well. But the goal for tonight is not so much to really overwhelm you with a whole lot of detailed information about the plan. It's really more to provide you with some background in terms of like why the plan was developed in the first place, and how we believe that it can really add value to the way that we serve our community, both now and really in the future. Then the next would be how community input was used in the plan's development. That's really a big piece of what we were doing. We've made some strides, but that is something that we're constantly looking to improve as well. We'll also talk about the 10 community outcome areas, which you may have heard about in press presentations, and they really serve as the foundation of the actual strategic plan. And then finally, I'll go over what we're focusing on now, and also what we're planning on in the up and coming months next year or so. Okay, so for some context for everybody, because I know everybody's kind of at a different familiarity with the plan. Most of the work to develop the countywide strategic plan was really done throughout 2019. And the first proposed plan was presented to the Board of Supervisors in early 2020. Then, of course, as everybody in this group knows, COVID hit. So when COVID hit, the decision was made to really pause the public process of the plan so that we could make adjustments to the community conditions and people's like day-to-day living experiences that really were changing as a result of the pandemic. And also, we're really trying to seek, during that time too, we're really trying to seek and listen to additional community feedback to be able to really really integrate that from an ongoing basis of what was going on. The strategic plan was designed to really be high level and long range enough to be able to stay relevant over time. We weren't necessarily expecting a test to that so quickly like the pandemic, but we were really happy to see that the majority of the plan really held its relevance and value even throughout the really unprecedented community conditions that arose over the last 2 years. So the strategic plan was designed to be really, like I said, high level, long range enough to be able to still stay relevant. Let's see, covered that one already. So let's see, the plan meant to be flexible. We said adoptable. Sorry, I just lost my place. Here we go. So the last bullet we're on. So the Board of Supervisors, the strategic plan was ultimately adopted by the Board of Supervisors this past October, actually, October 5th. And we're making sure, and we're going to continue to make sure to provide multiple links to the full set of documents on the website. And I'll give those links at the very end of the presentation as well. We've really gone through and tried to make it a little bit easier, more user-friendly as you go on, but we're going to continue to update that as more progress is being made on the plan as well. And then also, if you're more interested in a greater degree of background details, there's a couple of videos on the website that would be very helpful for some folks to take a look at. I'm not going to get into all the nitty-gritty tonight, but again, it has some very helpful information. It's a little bit outdated, but all the information stands true, and we're looking to update that very shortly. All right. So the countywide strategic plan goals. So one of the things that really surprises a lot of people is this is actually the first comprehensive strategic plan that Fairfax County has really ever adopted. There are multiple reasons why the county executive and the board of supervisors really saw a lot of value into pursuing this work. First, I'd say it really gave us a chance to kind of articulate and to agree on like a longer term vision for the county that can be pursued over the next like 10, 20, like 30 years and beyond. Second, it really allows us to, at a really high level, integrate and align all of the work that's happening consistently throughout the county. Now, that's not to say that the strategic plan would ever replace all of the issues and department-specific plans that we really need to do, like our day-to-day work. It's really just more to move us to a place where we're like better coordinated, and more importantly, like getting ourselves out of the department silos and having a better sense of what we're doing like countywide, as opposed to what we're doing department by department or like program by program. And that we're really moving, and improving really the way that we communicate the work to the community in a way that's like more, really more simple and accessible to folks. So in terms of the focus of the plan, as I mentioned, there's really like this long-term vision, which is kind of like the North Star we've been calling it, that we're moving towards. But we see the plan as a way to be able to focus and prioritize county initiatives over the next like really 3 to 5 years to be able to use the data and frame issues in such a way that the board can make really some more like near-term decisions as well. And then finally, progress. We're making sure that we're doing just a better job of communicating to the residents of Fairfax County, like the progress that we're really making relative to the goals that we've set. And also that we're really being transparent around many areas that we still have work to do. So making sure that is really available to everybody in the county. And I'd say that's something that I think we're working on as a full county, is really trying to make information more accessible to everybody. And that would be in multiple languages, in different areas. We do know that we've been making strides in it, but we also know that there's a lot of work to go on the community engagement piece. And speaking of community engagement, in addition to, we'll talk about the plan drivers. So in addition to making sure that we really have clear goals, we're able to articulate like the why that we needed the strategic plan. We also wanted to make sure that we were approaching the planning process in some new and some maybe some different ways this go around. As I mentioned, the plan was developed in close collaboration with One Fairfax. So as we focused and continue to focus on using a racial and social equity lens to really guide everything that we do and that we did to develop it. So related to that, throughout this process, we've really had like a real awareness of who generally participates in things like a strategic plan and strategic planning, and recognizing that we really needed to go beyond like the usual channels to be able to connect with and listen to like a really much wider segment of the community that might not normally participate. And let's see, and then third, we really use so that feedback from residents to identify the 10 community outcome areas that really serve as the foundation for the strategic plan. And we continuously reached out over time to determine whether we were really focusing on the right things or needed to make adjustments in the eyes of the community. And then once again, data, ensuring that we're improving the way that we collect and use and communicate data to residents of Fairfax County. And then going back to the community outcomes, some of you may have been aware before too, I say 10 community outcome areas, but it had previously been 9. However, we actually had health and environment together before, and we've separated them based on really community feedback and data as well. We felt that both environment and health needed to have their own specific focus, so they were separated into their own category. So what was previously was 9 is now 10. And I am a fast talker, so if anybody would like to interrupt at any time, please let me know. All right, if you can see this, let's see. So really this slide provides just like a snapshot of the community engagement that we used as we went about the development of the plan. When we look at the number of people who are part of this process and how and where, we really try to reach out to the people and places, like we said, who might have been historically really underrepresented in like a post-strategic planning process. I'd say as a whole, we really do think that we exceeded our past efforts with these types of initiatives in really a county government setting. But of course, you know, one of the goals of this plan is to continue to find like better ways to listen to people, both through official channels when we're talking about getting feedback for the strategic plan, but also in the many ways that the county and the community is always like talking to us about issues that matter. So for instance, groups like this, we're trying to go where people are already talking. We're really trying to make sure that we're listening to the feedback and then using that feedback to make some decisions, and that we're communicating to the public using messages that are really straightforward and clear. Let's see, and we're really constantly looking for ways that we can be that we can translate and use what we might consider like non-traditional outlets really to connect with folks. That's something that's been really a huge priority throughout the development of the plan and looking ahead at implementation. This is really something we're finding to be as equally important as we move forward as well. So like I said, I know this is quite small, but if you have any questions at the end about this, I'm happy to take them as well. All right, so here's a video. It's a short video that provides an overview of the 10 community outcome areas that I mentioned. These outcome areas were developed on the community feedback, and we can talk a little bit more about the specifics after. I'm really hoping that it works. So if for some reason the sound or anything is not working, which happens here and there, just let me know and I will reset it. And it's very short. It's only a couple minutes.
Through the 10 outcome areas that were developed based on community input, our first ever Fairfax Countywide strategic plan charts an exciting path towards our shared future as we work together with One Fairfax to preserve our existing quality of life while promoting equitable access to opportunity for all. Cultural and recreational opportunities. A future where all people are aware of and able to participate in quality arts, sports, recreation, and culturally enriching activities. Economic opportunity. A future where all people, businesses, and places are thriving economically. Effective and efficient government. A future where all people trust that their government responsibly manages resources, is responsive to their needs, provides exceptional services, and equitably represents them. Empowerment and support for residents facing vulnerability. A future where all residents facing vulnerability are empowered and supported to live independent lives to their fullest potential. Environment. A future where all people live in a healthy, sustainable environment. Health. A future where all people can attain their highest level of health and well-being. Housing and neighborhood livability. A future where all people live in communities that foster safe, enjoyable, and affordable living experiences. Lifelong education and learning. A future where all people at every stage of life are taking advantage of inclusive, responsive, and accessible learning opportunities that enable them to grow, prosper, and thrive. Mobility and transportation. A future where all people, businesses, and goods can move efficiently, affordably, and safely throughout the county and beyond via our well-designed and maintained network of roads, sidewalks, trails, and transit options. Safety and security. A future where all people feel safe at home, school, work, and in the community. Please follow our progress and find additional ways to share your thoughts and ideas at fairfaxcounty.gov, /strategic plan.
All right, I'm so pleased that that worked tonight. So this is part of our effort to really start showing people what we're doing and not continually telling folks what we're doing. We do know that sometimes when you talk about a strategic plan, it could very quickly put some folks to sleep, or it could be a little dry. And so we're making a hard effort to make it a little bit more exciting. And so you see this says English at the top. We do have this video and a few others available in, this one is English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Chinese. And we're actually going to continue on and make it available in the top 8 languages in the area, which we intend to do with many of our videos and presentations in the future. Oh, there we go. Okay. So like I said, as you saw and heard, we've got 10 community outcomes that were adopted by the Board of Supervisors in October. But along with these vision statements that provide the foundation for the countywide strategic plan, which is what you just heard as well. As we're really thinking about moving forward to implementation plan, we've identified 2 of the areas that are going to serve as sort of our starter areas, really our guinea pigs, if you will. Number 1, you'll see the first red highlighted. It's economic opportunity. We really felt that this one, it relates really closely and importantly to a lot of the other community outcome areas. So we're looking to really integrate some of the work that has taken place around like the COVID economic recovery framework to really continue to move some of these strategies forward. And then if you look at the second red highlight, that's actually effective and efficient government. This outcome area really relates to the way that we serve the community and everybody here. How well do we do it? How are we focusing on improving, the way that we serve people over time? How can we be more equitable really in our approach? We felt that internally to the county, focusing on this area would be really important, even as we look to continue the work that takes place across all the other 8 areas as well. And I don't think that we're really waiting for, we weren't sitting here waiting for a countywide strategic plan. So there's a lot of work related to each of these areas that's really going on and going to continue to move forward, even as we're honing in on just these 2 to start. So as I mentioned, really all the documents are posted online. So if you're interested, there's a lot of background information, some context setting information if you want more detail, as I mentioned earlier. So really, as I mentioned also, I just wanted to note that we really are doing everything we can to translate and get the information out to not just folks who need the translation, but to the communities as well. We know that translation is really just the first part of this. We can say we are translating it, but what we're really trying to do is push the information to the communities who would need that as well. So it's really not enough just to do the first step. We're trying to take it from every approach and really get the information out there. And then, as I mentioned, we're really trying to focus on communicating ways that really aren't like overly bureaucratic and it's accessible to a lot of different people. We really want to try to include as many people as we can into the work of the strategic plan and hear as many voices like right now and in the future. We keep attending presentations such as this one, and we're happy to attend any others where there's already an audience that is there and gathered for any specific reason, because we find that to have the best feedback instead of having events or presentations specifically for the strategic plan. Rather, we're finding it to be more valuable to go, like I said, where people are already talking. And then lastly, as I said, I just want to share, my contact information here in case you have questions or need information. We really want to keep working to bring as many people as possible into communication or in the conversations really about the strategic plan. And so I really do encourage you to reach out to myself if you have any information you'd like to share, any questions. And also my colleague, Amy Bropst, whom many of you may know as well, or some of you do. We are the only 2 that are working on the strategic plan, but we are both extremely happy to talk about the work that we do at any time. I'm going to pull this off so I can see some more faces and answer any questions that may pop up. All right, I can see everybody now. Yep. there's any questions. And I just want to reiterate too, especially with this group, what we did find really interesting was that we had the strategic plan and it was developed and started in 2019. And all of a sudden we have this pandemic hitting, right? And we were thinking, oh no, we're going to have to just throw all this hard work up in the air and start from scratch, or at least reduce some of it. But most of it really, really held true. Because we're really trying to do it at that high level point where it has that flexibility to work with some groups and work with what's going on. The main change was that shift between 9 areas to the 10 community outcome areas, where I think was so important. And it was even more evident after COVID hit that health and environment just needed their own community outcome area, so that equal focus and the right amount of focus was given to each of the areas.
Lori, quick question.
Mhm.
With the outcome areas, you mentioned safety and security, and obviously, emergency planning is one of those cross silo issues that every single outcome is affected by. Because of the nature of this evening's presentation and discussion, can you talk a little bit more about the safety and security outcome? What is envisioned by that, what we think that is, and where that's going?
Absolutely. So I pulled up the information on this because I knew at 7:30 at night, I'm not going to remember everything. But let's see, let me get to the top. So I just want to go to the actual areas that I want to touch on so I get it right. And our vision statements. For that.
That's sort of a related question.
Yep, sure.
At what level do you consider the strategic plan interfacing with the tactical plans of disaster response and such?
Well, that I will start with. So, and then I'll jump back because I'm going to share screens in a moment. So, what we've been doing is we've been providing a crosswalk, and this answers part of the first question as well. What we've been doing is we've really been crosswalking all of the plans that are going on in community, the economic recovery framework, the chairman's task force, any of them that come up under safety and security. So with emergency management as well, we're trying to find where there's those connections as well. So we can say, hey, there's all these similar strategies. Let's make sure that we start by just noting what's already going on. And so we're trying to connect all the dots as best we can. Sometimes these dots don't really want to be connected, but we're trying to make them connect, or they just haven't been before. And so we're really trying to integrate everything together and do these crosswalks. What's going to happen in the next part of this is we're actually not going to make that decision on our own. I think that's, we don't have that knowledge and know-how of all the different departments. So as far as how we're going to integrate, what that's really going to look like is we're working with the deputy county executives who are each taking on a few of the community outcome areas, and with their help and with the steering committee, we're actually reaching out to the subject matter experts of each of these departments that are included of the area. So like safety and security, we would be, of course, representing you all as well, because we're relying on those subject matter experts to say, hey, here's this plan. Hey, this is what's already going on. Let's figure out how we can integrate. And while it's not one of our first, and not to say it isn't a priority. But like I said, I think what we envision is really connecting with the people who do the work and going to those frontline staff members to say what is already being done and trying to ask them, how can we integrate it? Our goal is not to create more work for people. Instead, we really want to know what's already going on, what can maybe some tweaks really be made, what's being done in the spirit of the plan, and help us make those connections and not really having us tell everybody else how we're going to do this. Did that answer that first question or the second one? All right, so then when we talk about safety and security and what that really looks like, I'm going to share my screen again real quick, which I think. All right, so this is part of what we said where what does success look like, right? So we've got our safety and security, and we've got following laws and regulations, timelines and quality of emergency response, effective and equitable administration of justice right here. So what we've done is we've come up with what safety and security, really the message is all people feel safe at home. But within the plan for every single one of these areas, we've come up with these statements as well that says like, hey, what is it going to look like in the end if we've completed this? And so for everyone, I highly recommend you take a look at the plan, especially I would say look page 10, so it's page 9 and 10. It really gives a great snapshot of what it's really going to look like for each of these specific areas as well. As far as the metrics and strategies, right now we had proposed metrics. Well, we had metrics approved, but we have proposed strategies. And I will say that as far as strategies goes, we have 228 strategies listed under the strategic plan, which is more than the amount of metrics we have. And so what we're doing, and we knew this from the get-go, what we're really doing right now is coming up with some headline metrics. We're working with the Countywide data analytics team to really help us narrow it down. And so as far as what those strategies are going to look like, it's a little bit of a to be determined in a sense, because once we get to those subject matter experts, and once everybody has that time to take a look at the different strategies and what would be like the headliners, we'll have a better idea. We can't start with all 228. But what we do know is when we're looking at these strategies, we're also trying not to start with those that maybe rely on surveys for information. We want to try to start with those that actually have data that's readily available that we can kind of pick at. And then as it progresses, we can get to some of those other ones. Especially since looking at surveys isn't as easy as you'd think. We don't have like a pot of where these surveys are in the county. And so that's actually one of the goals that I've been working on as well with everybody is just trying to create a bank of what surveys are going on within the county. And we're at 145 and counting, and that is not representative of everybody. So again, hopefully that answers a bit of your questions here.
It does very well. And obviously what we're doing tonight falls under the safety related prevention and preparedness little bucket there that you have.
It does, yes.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I think if you do look in,
Lori, we did have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say we do have a question in the chat. Will you consider adding Amharic language, considering that many Ethiopian origin population live in Fairfax County?
Sure thing. Yeah, I actually I don't have a problem with that at all. I am mid translation of this video. We've got 4 down, 4 underway, and I will absolutely take note of that without a problem. We do want to make sure we represent those folks. So sure thing. Like I said, I love feedback like that because it helps to steer us in the right direction. I'm actually going to write a note about that when I get off of here. Let's see, I'm scrolling up just to see if there's any other comments or questions there.
I think one other question.
Sure.
I work for my district supervisor on something called a small area plan. And we did something like 10, 20, 30 years. Are you on cycles of graduating your scaling your planning on a period, or what's a small area plan and where'd all that work go?
Yes, so we're not there quite yet, I would say. Right now, we're really just kicking off. We are going to have an annual report out. So every single year, we're going to do a report out and post that information. But that's part of what I'm talking about with this crosswalk. So when we're looking at plans, as you've mentioned, we're trying to take what's already in existence and try to match that up with what is going on right now and compare those strategies. So I can't say that we necessarily have these long-term and short-term goals set quite yet because it's really just been adopted. And so the board is really looking to help us prioritize, and the deputy county executives are helping us prioritize, and the steering committee as well. But I'm certainly going to take note that that's there. And by all means, if folks have some plans that you want us to look at to try to help cross compare, we'll happily take those as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's relatively new right now, and we don't want to just start and jump right in without all the information first. So the first part of what we're trying to do is really just put our ears to the ground and just start listening. And so that's where we're starting right now.
Yeah, we met once a week for 2 years and prepared a report for our district supervisor.
Oh yeah, rest assured, we're really not trying to recreate work for people. So when we're pulling these subject matter experts together for information purposes as well, we're not asking them to like recreate and go through this whole development process. We're trying to do all the back end work ourselves and then just say, yep, check, yep, you got the right plan. Yep, we're seeing what these connections. We do not want people to recreate or feel like the work was done in vain. It's the opposite. We're meeting with these folks to say, hey, have we addressed all your concerns? Have we looked at the right places? Tell us where we're lacking. Tell us where we need to kind of, add in some more.
Thank you.
Mhm. We don't want to scare people off. We keep telling you, we're not trying to create more work or throw your work to the side. We're really just trying to, like I said, connect those dots. And it is shocking how many dots don't always want to be connected. And I will tell you, if I have to look at another crosswalk or strategic plan to mirror together, I don't know. I may have some PTSD after this, but that is okay because we are doing it for all the right reasons. I think it's well worth the time and the effort that it's taken to do this because number one, we're learning a lot, but number two, we're pulling in the work that's already out there and being done and just helping to connect those dots. Right. And my information was there. So if questions come up later, I'm more than happy to answer, call, email, whichever way you contact me is not a problem.
Thank you so much, Lori. We really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you for having me. I love coming to things
Thank
like
you,
this.
Lori.
It's captive audience and you guys already have a specific interest in the county and its well-being. So it's groups like these that I think really we get the best feedback and good information to bring forth and include.
I have a question. When you work with, when you're making a plan for the county, do you consider an interface with the COG for, especially when it comes to boundary residents, that is residents who live along a boundary and wind up getting half the service because they can only be served by half of their surroundings? Being separated from their neighbors by a municipal boundary.
Yes. So I hear what you're saying. And I think in this particular case, we absolutely did everything we could to get out to the community. And there's a whole community engagement report too that I could send to you about where we got to. But what we tried to do as far as getting to some of those communities that may have been split or underrepresented or just not really connected for various reasons was we really try to partner with NCS and some other folks who are already in those specific areas that may, have some sort of challenge in reaching out to us. And so I think we did as best we could to reach out to those folks. I can't say that it couldn't have been better because, we can always do better. But in this particular case, I think we reached out where we could and when we could. But if there's any additional information you'd like me to send to you on what we've done and where we've been, I'd be happy to.
Well, do you have a feel for which of our neighboring municipalities, counties, et cetera, were interested in participating in our strategic plan or at least understanding our strategic plan? The Council of Governments has in the past tried to do this sort of thing, but much like starting a train, the engine starts up and yanks on the second car and that yanks on the third car, but they're not in sync yet. It sometimes takes work to make sure that people around the surrounding governments have a feel for what you're doing before they can agree to participate or even cooperate.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't necessarily say, hey, we've been to this particular meeting or this particular point, but I do know most of the Board of Supervisor members have been working with some counterparts just to fill them in on what we are doing and what has been done. And it was a little bit before the time I came when actually a lot of this was being planned. But I see it's JB, and I think I may have your email from earlier. So I would be happy to get some more information on that and just get it over to you too, because I don't want to speak without knowing more of what to tell you. Quite honestly, I think my counterpart may have more information to give you on that. But I would be happy to get you a response.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lori. And so in the spirit of, safety and security, and within safety and security, the little part that we look at is the safety related prevention and preparedness. Let's switch gears from, Lori was talking to us about big level plans, high level strategic things at the 10,000 foot level, 5 year, maybe 10-year out. Let's look at us, right? How does the things that we just discussed affect us? What are our threats and hazards? Now, why we are going to talk about a very specific threat and hazard this evening, let's have a very generalized discussion. Real quick, just think about, maybe it didn't happen in Fairfax County, maybe it happened to you in another place, but what are some of the things that can happen to us here in Fairfax County? You can put that here in the chat, or you can just come off of a microphone and tell us. Oh, Courtney, you spoiled it. That's all right. Don't go back. I'm just teasing
Oh
you.
shoot! Sorry,
That's okay.
I thought maybe I missed my cue to.
No, that's okay. No, I'm just kidding. You're fine. But actually, the list is much larger than this list, right? We can have floods. We can have the remnants of hurricanes. We can even have earthquakes. We're in a very seismically prone zone. What else can you guys think of? You can put it in the chat, or you can just shout it out to me. What else can you think
Well,
of?
there's hot, cold, dry.
Sure. Thank you. Yes. All of that, right? Extreme temperatures on both ranges, winter storms. Absolutely. That can be an emergency in terms of long-term power outage. Yep. Anybody else? So we've got Dulles Airport in our area, right?
Yeah, we do a 5-year disaster plan up there.
Absolutely.
But we also have civil unrest. I don't know if January 6th occurred in anywhere in Virginia, but it could have.
Yes, absolutely. And hazardous material spills, not just on 95 and 495, but internal to Fairfax as well, any type of corrosive material. You guys are right. You're all over it. There's lots of things. Now, we live in a relatively safe area of our nation, Northern Virginia. But that is not to say that things don't happen here, because they certainly have happened here, and they could happen in the future. And this is an important kind of psychological part for us to realize and accept that, unfortunately, bad things can happen to good people. These things could happen to us. And so preparing for them, not just physically getting the things and the materials that we need to prepare, but also preparing for them psychologically is really important, and admitting to ourselves that yes, these things could happen to us. Courtney, if you could advance the slide, please. Excellent, thank you. I don't want to belabor this point. We can divide these things into a lot of different ways. You can look at natural hazards from, the geological aspect, storms aspect, wind and weather. You can look at human-caused things. Sometimes we talk about technological disasters or human-caused disasters, and then, of course, everyday emergencies such as, a home fire. While that might not be a danger or represent a danger to everybody in Fairfax County, but it certainly represents a danger to that family who's having it transpire in their home and in that street, on that neighborhood. So categorizing them, we're going to talk about one particular natural hazard this evening, floods. But remember, there's lots of different categories and lots of different hazards we're talking about. Next slide, please, Courtney. Let's talk a little bit more about flooding. One, I want folks tonight to take away just a couple of key terms, and that is understanding. We hear this on the weather channel all the time, a flood watch, a flood warning, a flash flood watch, a flash flood warning. Just please remember that a flood watch or a flash flood watch means that the conditions are ripe. It could happen. There is a possibility. But a warning means that it's imminent and that it could be occurring right now where you're at. So if you're ever advised to evacuate, please do so immediately. That's extremely important, especially during a flood, because we don't have lots and lots of time, especially in a flash flood situation, to think about it, ask our neighbors, call somebody, do all these kinds of low-level analysis that human beings do. When we're asked to evacuate, please do so immediately. And a warning means that it is happening. And so thank you. Courtney, if you could advance. So what's important to do about flooding is have a preparedness mindset, right? That is, the things that we do before a flood matter a lot. We don't want to just react to the flood. And one of those is making sure that our situational awareness and what we sometimes say our common operating picture is up to date and aware. You are paying attention. You have a NOAA radio. You have signed up for Fairfax alerts. You get the texts. Perhaps you get the calls, but you have multiple ways. And just a tip from Rob this evening, don't just do Fairfax's, do all the counties that you transit through, because if you commute all the way to DC, well, that's a different area. And if you go around through Maryland, well, there's some other counties. So have multiple alerts from where you routinely travel so you can get those updates immediately. Also, prepare your home for flooding by cleaning gutters and drains and making sure that if you are living in a known floodplain, that those areas where water routinely build up in gutters and streets are clean and the drain is serviceable outside your home in the street. And if a flood is imminent, try to disconnect as many things as possible from the electricity in your home, all of your appliances and all the things that plug in order to reduce the hazard on the home if water does come in. And also, real key point here is that everybody, even if you don't live near a river or a stream or a large lake, which is a kind of a misnomer about flood insurance. People think, well, I don't live near the ocean. I don't live near a large river. I don't need flood insurance. Actually, almost all of us need flood insurance, and I'm going to explain why in just a minute. And it is separate for most homeowners policies. And what I like to say is first things are first, not just for flooding, but for just everyday life. Everybody should know a little first aid because it can save your life, not just in a flood, but in any emergency. Next slide, Courtney. I'm not going to belabor this vocabulary, but I think it's really interesting, at least science-wise. These terms get thrown around all the time, and a lot of people haven't reflected on the math of what they actually mean when they're talking about flood insurance. You know, we routinely refer to 10-year, 50-year, and 100-year floods. And those have to do with the probability of a flood of a particular size happening. And what I mean by that is in a 100-year flood, that's a 1% chance of being equaled or exceeded in a given year. So when you, a common misnomer that you hear on the news when people are talking about these things is that when you have a really, really large flood, some people say, well, you know, that was a 100-year flood. At least we're not going to have another one like this for another 100 years. Okay, no, that's not how it works. Like, so mathematically, you could have two 100-year floods in the same year, and that actually happens. And so it's just a way to look at the frequency and the probability mathematically of how these things happen. A 50-year flood, of course, would be a 2% probability in any given year. And that's what that means when it says 100-year flood. It's not that that has to occur every 100 years or that you have to have 100 years between them. It just has to do with frequency and probability. Next slide, please. A little bit about flood insurance. If you do not have flood insurance this evening and you're listening in, please inquire about getting some, because interestingly, even if your personal home floods, like the sewage is backed up in your home, or you have just a flood in your home, insurance will cover that. And so that can be a flood insurance issue of just one home on a street needing to be, cleaned out and gets flooded. And a very minor flood can cause thousands and thousands of thousands worth of dollars in damages, because once carpet and a couch gets soaked, it's almost impossible to dry it out thoroughly. And then it starts to grow all kinds of weird chemically produced molds and all these other things, and it becomes a different kind of hazard. And so really most flooded things have to be discarded. And so the other misnomer I'd like to share with everyone about flood insurance is like, so let's say there's a hurricane coming towards the coast. Some smart people will say, you know what, looks like I need flood insurance. That's too late, because there's a 30-day waiting period once you purchase flood insurance. And the same way with disposing of your flood insurance or turning it off or stopping it, there's a 30 to 45 day period of stoppage on flood insurance. So you can't turn it on and off before the rains and before the hurricanes coming. And so having it is well worth the cost. And most people don't realize that the average homeowner's insurance does not include flood insurance. So please, sometime this week, please inquire about flood insurance if you don't already have it. Next slide, please.
Robert, I'd like to mention something.
Yes, of course, please.
The statistics you gave us on the previous frame apply to historical statistics. And I might mention, and everybody may already know, but our statistics are changing. And so with the increase in the variability of our weather patterns, those statistics, although used by the insurance company, are being have to be changed or have to be tempered in our minds, at least, in that weather is getting worse than the mapping statistics show.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. And as a matter of fact, in the next presentation, I'm going to remind myself to make a slide about that, because for everyone's awareness, regardless of what you think the cause is of climate change, there's a lot of data that shows that many, most, if not all, weather phenomenon are increasing in size and frequency and destructive power. So, and that includes floods. So thank you very much for bringing that to our attention, because all of these things, tornadoes, hurricanes, wildfires, floods, are all increasing. And while we're on that matter, I did want to point out to everyone that the natural disaster that causes the most destruction in terms of property, injury, and loss of life around the globe is flooding, right? A lot of people would think that it's something else, something more violent, something more drastic, but no, it is flooding. So during a flood, let's say we have the unfortunate opportunity to actually experience a flood, you're going to want to listen to all official information, have that good situational awareness, common operating picture, know where you're at, know what's going on in terms of physically where you're at. If you encounter rising water, get out, move to higher ground. Any higher ground is going to be better than where you're at, making sure not to touch electrical equipment. And you want to stay clear of any flood water, because one of the nastiest substances in the world is flooded water. Because when you think of everything, hospitals, sewage, dead animals, everything that is going to be in that water, it is in and of itself hazardous material. You actually should use, if you're going to in the recovery phase, if you have to do something in your home, you should use hazardous protective material to be in that water. And also, we like to say, turn around, don't drown. We have all these nice little phrases in emergency preparedness for different things to tell us to remember, help us remember what to do. Turn around, don't drown is really important, because it points to the psychological weakness that we have when we face just a small amount, what we think is a small amount of water. So you see, you know, some standing water and you think, hey, Rob, we can drive through that. Why should we drive miles and miles and miles all around to this other place to get around that? I can just drive through that. So be very careful with that thinking. Do not do that, because it just takes 12 to 16 inches to float most cars. So all of a sudden you're crossing something and you lose traction, and now you are part of the water system, right? Floating away, unable to recover your vehicle. And the same thing happens to pedestrians. Unfortunately, you can go on YouTube and see a lot of examples of this. People in urban flooding situations, downtown Chicago, downtown DC, downtown New York, even downtown Fairfax, can be walking along and not know, even though that's just 8 inches of water, not know that the flood has taken off a manhole cover or something that you can't see. And all of a sudden you introduce yourself into an extremely dangerous situation, and you were just a pedestrian with an umbrella. Now you're in a really hazardous predicament. So turn around, don't drown. And of course, stay away from any kind of power line that's down, because we don't know if it's charged or not. We're not qualified to actually say what we think it is, even if it doesn't look live. So just stay away from all things that look like waters. Next slide, please.
Robert, I have a couple of points.
Please, of course.
as far as turn around, don't drown, being able to see the street under the water that you're thinking about driving on doesn't mean that the street still has a foundation. I've seen 2 vehicles disappear because the pavement wasn't supported by anything. It was just sitting there in the water, getting skimmed, and the foundation had been washed away underneath. So the car drives onto 3 inches of water and drops down into 6 feet of water under the pavement. The other
produces
point,
sinkholes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The other, actually, it's a question, and that is, do you have any idea of the impact of flooding on subterranean power systems? My neighborhood is being undergrounded, and I've not been able to get any what I thought would be reasonably careful thinking about how those systems will be affected by flooding, since I presume that the power system is not hermetically sealed from the power plant to my house.
Now, I will say, just from simple basic knowledge, that some of that infrastructure has more protection than other parts. But obviously there are many parts that are being upgraded, that have not been upgraded, and that in and of itself presents not only its own hazard, but certainly could cause a long-term power outage. You're absolutely right. But there are various stages of Dominion Power upgrading these types of things and making things, quote unquote, less flood vulnerable, not because nothing's flood proof, but less flood vulnerable. But, you know, that's always a work in progress. But thank you for bringing that up.
Most of what I've heard is that it's storm resistant. That is, tree fells are the main thing they're trying to protect against, but flooding doesn't seem to be part of their vernacular.
No, and that's another great euphemistic term, right? Storm resistant as opposed to storm proof, because nothing is ever storm proof. Yeah. Thank you for bringing those things up. So after a flooding, if flooding happens to our home, to our neighborhood, to our house of worship, wherever we're at, to our school, only go back when it has been said that it's safe to do so by official authorities. People get antsy, the floodwaters go back down, and hey, I want to go to my home. You know, it may not be safe yet for lots and lots of reasons, because floods bring out lots of wild animals. They don't have anywhere to go. And not only that, but there's lots of dangerous things. We just talked about how awful floodwater is. If that hasn't completely receded, that is very, very dangerous. Certainly never, ever think that any kind of water like this is potable or that you can drink it. And certainly if anyone uses a well, that has to be completely cleaned out and refurbished. And so just things like that, you want to start eliminating, when possible, standing water, because now after a flood, we start creating other public health hazards from standing water in terms of breeding mosquitoes, which starts pretty quickly, and in terms of animal carcasses and everything that can be just left lying around to get rid of that. Now, once you go into your home, if you've been away for several days and it hasn't been any electricity to the home, then you're just going to throw away everything that's in the refrigerator and the freezer. Trust me on this. When in doubt, throw it out. But after a few days, there's no doubt about the things that are in there. Despite the expiration date, if most things coming above 50 degrees, it starts to rot. So anything that's gotten really, really wet, like couches and furniture and carpet, the vast majority of it is going to have to be thrown out and collected. And your neighborhood officials, your city officials, county officials will announce collection points, usually to take out to the curb like you would trash, or other kinds of designated points for debris retrieval. And that'll be announced on where to take the things. And of course, you know, as everyone's coming back home, hopefully you've been in contact with your family and friends, you know where they're at, and you have a good family communication plan, and you're able to do that. But get back in touch with people, because they may not have been in touch with you, maybe if you've been unable to communicate with folks. And so just start reconnecting, you know, those families and those networks and those neighborhoods, so everyone knows you're safe. Next slide, please, Courtney.
I'm sorry, Robert. I seem to be monopolizing, but
not at all. We love your enthusiasm.
The preparation should include some long-term planning as well, in that in Fairfax County, most of the flooding occurs for brief periods of time. There are flash floods and sudden floods that are usually gone within a day or two. And a number of my neighbors have had that issue, and I've recommended that they consider wiring their power systems and their data systems so that they can segment their house to higher and lower ground, especially if it's a 2 or 3 floor building. If they can make their basement and first floor isolable in their power distribution panel, so that they can disconnect the lower floor and maintain power in the upper floor or floors, that makes their house considerably more resilient, and their life can be a lot more quickly recovered.
That is a marvelous point. It's absolutely true. Sometimes you get pushed up into the second floor, and you would make any structure a lot more resilient that way, having different panels to be able to do that. And that's a really good point. Thanks for sharing it with the group. Greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, almost anybody can adjust, modify their service panel. And I don't remember any of the houses in our neighborhood that flooded that the power got up to the service panel. It was a matter of getting it from the service panel to a separate circuit rather than a combined circuit up and downstairs.
Sure. And certainly with all these considerations, please, although maybe some folks in the group are really, really good do-it-yourselfers, please talk to an electrician about all these things and have it done to code and officially. So thanks so much for bringing that up, though. Those are excellent points. Talking a little bit more, getting away from flooding and talking just a little bit more about our responsibilities as citizens in Fairfax County under, the safety-related prevention and preparedness construct. We've talked a little bit about preparedness. We talked just a little bit about response, but also, and then this recover piece as it pertains to flooding. But we haven't talked about mitigation yet. And mitigation is a great thing to discuss. And I have a slide on it here in just a minute. But those 4 words, preparing for something, responding to it, recovering from it, and then using what we've learned in response and recovery to mitigate can help eliminate, lessen, and maybe completely get rid of altogether certain particular emergencies, right? So working through this cycle of understanding what to do before, during, and then after various emergencies is really, no kidding, our responsibilities as citizens. I always like to say that everyone's a first responder and everyone's a leader. And it's really, really true, because our valiant first response forces, fire, law enforcement, emergency medical, will be really, 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 really busy during an actual emergency or disaster. So we need to be able to take care of ourselves at least for 3 days is kind of the common standard of thinking. So everyone's a leader and everyone's a first responder. Next slide, Courtney. And you're going to be happy to know that Fairfax County and all the friendly folks in the Emergency Management and Security, Department of Emergency Management and Security, have got great programs for you. One of those is Ready Fairfax. There's a lot of different component parts to Ready Fairfax in terms of helping us be empowered to help ourselves and to be that leader and to be that first responder just in case something happens. Next slide, Courtney. And one of those great tools that we use in Ready Fairfax is the Community Emergency Response Guide. Courtney mentioned at the beginning of our session how this has been recently published and was updated during COVID. And let me tell you what, as someone who has to read lots and lots of these documents because of my profession, I'm a professional emergency manager for the federal government, I can tell you that this is really one of the better ones that I've ever seen amongst state, local, city guides. It's really, really, really good. And all that we're talking about tonight is just the tip of the iceberg on things that you can find in this wonderful layout of not only one document, but the various sub-documents and annexes that come with it to help prepare your neighborhood, prepare your business, prepare your family. Next slide, please. And as I said, we have a business disaster resilience. We have kids, we have teens, we have different populations mentioned in here. We talked just a little bit about the Resilient Neighborhood program well, we have a 5-step neighborhood guide in here as well. So for us to be the leaders that we would like to be, not just of our own families and our own homes, but maybe helping our homeowner association or helping our faith-based group or helping our school do some of these things to make better prepared organizations. Because when you look at emergency preparedness, it's like a triangle. And the base of that triangle is us and our families and our communities, because our overall city and county cannot be prepared unless we're prepared. Next slide, please, Courtney. Let's go back real quick to that mitigation part, and let me tell you why I think it's important. First of all, if you ever come up on one of these projects in a homeowners association or in your business, or you hear county officials talking about it, mitigation is one of these very interesting things. Nobody wants to spend money on it. You know, let's say we were just talking about a flood. Let's say you could spend $100,000 on a little levee improvement, and then you could maybe lessen the flood next time. Well, people will go, man, $100,000, Rob, that's, you know, that's a lot of money. I don't know. We've got so many other priorities. But what if I told you by spending that $100,000, you could save $400,000 during the response phase? Because that's how mitigation works. It's usually a 1-to-4 ratio most of the time. Spending $1 in mitigation helps you not spend $4 in response and recovery. So if you ever have mitigation things come up, and I know some people are like, oh, this is the most boring topic ever. You know, I'm not going to go to the county board meeting and talk about mitigation, but really you should, because this is where the money's made. This is where money is saved. This is where your homeowners association can save a lot of money, which is some very, very basic projects. If you'll spend money on it, you won't have to spend money later in response and recovery. Next slide, please, Courtney. So what can you do for preparedness? It's kind of a 5-step process we've talked about preparedness overall, and we like to use the term all hazards preparedness, because although we talked about flooding this evening, really I don't want you to have the mindset that, oh my gosh, Rob, do I have to have an earthquake plan, a flood plan, a hurricane plan, a civil unrest plan? Like, no, because if you do good overall planning, that is going to cover about 80% of all emergencies and disasters. So you're going to want to create your family emergency plan. You're going to want to practice that plan. You're going to want to assemble your emergency kit to either shelter in place in your home or to maybe have to evacuate and leave. You're going to want to stay informed by registering for the things we're going to talk about here in just a second. And then you want to get involved in your community. Try and help other people be prepared. You know, these messages that we're talking about this evening of preparedness are messages of hope and love. They are not messages of doom and gloom. This is not the type of thing where, oh my gosh, disasters are going to happen. I don't want to talk about it. This is awful. This is actually not that kind of prepared type of presentation. It's actually a presentation of hope and love. We care about our families and we care about each other enough to have these conversations. Next slide, Courtney. So please, if you are not already signed up, get Fairfax alerts, right? You want to stay informed. There's, there's Twitter, there's Facebook, there's having a NOAA radio. There's all kinds of ways for you to stay informed. And I highly recommend all of them because we have so many devices and so many things that we're looking at all the time, whether it's a laptop or a cell phone. You know, sign up for these things. And also, if necessary, sign up for the functional needs registry so the county knows that in an emergency, you might have some special things that you need attended to in order to evacuate or be rescued. Next slide. And how can you get involved? Well, one, you can join me and Marco and many, many other folks here in the volunteer corps for Fairfax County, the Office of Emergency Management Volunteer Corps. But there's lots and lots and lots of other opportunities. Fairfax County has lots of great folks in many, many different organizations. And some of us, of course, are serial volunteers where we're members of many of these organizations, whether it's the Medical Reserve Corps or the Community Emergency Response Team or the Chaplains Corps or the Fire Corps. You know, if you like emergency preparedness, all of these organizations would love to have your knowledge, your time, and your ability and attitude to help your community respond in case of an emergency. Next slide, please. I did just want to mention really quickly in terms of response, not just for flooding, but for anything, you're going to want to prepare how to lock down, right? At your place of work and where you live. How do you prevent others from coming in, and how do you stay there for up to perhaps even 3 days? So having the water, the food, the other things that you need to be on a lockdown in order to shelter in place is really, really important, because in a and there are many, many things that could cause a lockdown or a shelter in place, like a hazardous material spill. Once the local law enforcement or local fire ask us to shelter in place because of a chemical spill or a hazardous material accident, that's exactly what that means. We don't have a lot of time to think about it. We have to get inside, close the doors, close the windows, and stay there until told otherwise. And then, of course, in evacuation, there are a lot of things that would cause us to have to leave in a hurry. And that's why I really want to encourage everyone to have one of those go bags with the things that they're going to need, a nice backpack or some other kind of carrying thing, not too heavy and not too many things, but just some of the basic survival things you'll need for 3 days in case you have to evacuate immediately. Next slide, please. Now, we talked about recovery. Just the last thing I would like to mention about recovery, and that is whether it's a wildfire or a flood or some other thing that has happened in your neighborhood, remember, always safety first. Have they told you that you can actually go back to your home or apartment? That's very, very important to know, because it may not be safe. And then cleaning up is its own just kind of disaster in and of itself, in terms of the chemical hazards that could be around, the other types of hazards that could be around. So make sure you're doing all of these things safely. You're also going to start all the administration of this, filing insurance claims and applying for disaster assistance, which is a lengthy conversation that we're not going to go into this evening, but there's going to be county, state, and federal assistance of which you sign up for, and there will be mobile teams that come and help us out with that. But filing your insurance will be a lot easier if you already have a good thumb drive with all of your residential belongings and your important documents like birth certificates, insurance documents, property documents, all loaded up on that thumb drive, so you have everything at your disposal so you can start making claims. Next slide, please. So we have talked a lot this evening about many, many things about the government strategic plan, talked about flooding, and then we talked about emergency preparedness in general. We hope that everyone will come visit us again in April, where we're going to talk about a really, really important topic, which is our own personal financial preparedness and readiness. I think some citizens have the idea that if something goes really, really wrong and I lose all my stuff, well, the state and federal government are just going to come and start giving me money and everything's okay. That is not how it works at all. We actually, just like I said, we're all leaders and we're all first responders. We're also all our own financial managers. And we have to know, and it's not just about saving up a little extra money. It's a little more complicated than that. And we will tell you all about it in April in terms of your financial preparedness for disasters. Next slide, please. Now, we want to, on behalf of the entire crew and the Office of Emergency Management and Security, we want to thank everybody for coming this evening. Before we close out, though, I did want to open it up to questions, comments, or concerns, and also anything, Marco, that I may have missed that you'd like to add. Always happy to have you jump in as well. And anybody else that would like to come off a microphone or put something in the chat room before we close this evening, would love to talk to you.
Yeah, I did think of one of my most asked questions with the 100-year and 50-year flooding coming sooner and more frequent. People are finding out in parts of Fairfax County that their basements get wet or leak or start to flood. And the solution that the industry has provided is something called a sump pump. And then they crack up your basement floor and they put you in a pump, and then it's got a circuit electrical pump. And then it goes to a hole they make for you to go outside in your backyard or something. Well, people say, oh, I got a sump pump, so I'm all right now. Well, what did we find out? If the power goes out, then the basement still floods. So now we said, oh, good. I thought I did something here 5 or 10 years ago for this flooding. Now I'm looking over here and I noticed that at my local hardware, they've got the basement pump backup battery. So they got a battery you can get and something. So think about things. I'm glad people are getting on it in Fairfax about, oh yeah, you don't have to be on the Potomac River to flood, or, you know, by Lake Bancroft or something. And then there's that other slide. We did want to remind them about next week, and we already did a flash preview for Thursday, right? And Fairfax alerts, please learn about those. And there's the link. Sometimes you have to highlight the whole link or type it in to your browser, but we're very excited about next week here at Emergency Management. Thank you.
I have a question about flooding,
Yes.
about insurance.
Go ahead, Rob. Yeah.
Will flood insurance allow you to pick the amount of coverage you want? For instance, can you say you want $25,000 total for your house and its furnishings, and that's the max? Or do you get, or can you get replacement value for your house and its furnishings, or is it capped?
Thank you so much for asking that question. They will run you through this really long survey and do an analysis of the value of your home and the contents of your home. And then they will make recommendations. There is a federal minimal limit because flood insurance is backed by the federal government. And so I forget what exactly that minimum level is, but it also depends on the district where you live. So there's a lot of complications in terms of the census and the value and what they think is already its worth. But there are minimums and maximums in terms of that. And also it's important, if you've already applied for flood insurance before because your home was flooded, that's another conversation you're going to have with these guys doing the survey with you.
Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you.
This may be more tactical than you want to get to, but you were talking earlier, or Mr. Johnson was talking earlier about a sump pump, and the cost of putting one of those into your basement may be a few $100s, but it requires power. And the more effective mitigation is basically a French drain to downhill from your house. Just understanding the hydraulics of your yard can save you tens of thousands of dollars in either excavation costs or house repair, house replacement costs later. So it's worth investigating, getting a little knowledge about how your flooding might occur if it ever does.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. And along with what Marco alluded to, everything mechanical needs maintenance and can break. And so there are people that have, this happened to a neighbor of mine, you know, I have a sump pump, but it wasn't working, you know, when my basement flooded because he hadn't tested it. You can test a sump pump, you know, really easily. They have a little, you know, button that you're supposed to do once a month, you know, or something like that. But if you don't ever do it and it breaks and you don't know it, then, you know, it's just going to be a hunk of junk during an actual flood.
I recommend,
anybody else?
I recommend adding that step in your family disaster plan, your emergency preparation plan, which I also recommend that you exercise twice a year at the same time you exercise your smoke alarms, CO alarms, and reset the time of, you know, when we go from daylight savings to not.
Absolutely. All great tips. Thank you very much for sharing those. I think anybody would want to be your neighbor, by the way. You're going to be in a really, really safe place with yourself around.
It's surprising how often people are resistant to doing things differently from what they've always done. But
yeah, it's very true. Well, then there's the psychological piece of like, it's never going to happen to me, right? Which is what lots of people fool themselves with, and like, well, we live in a safe, nice area, you know, nothing's ever going to happen here. So anybody else? Questions, comments, concerns? I'm sorry, go ahead.
You said anybody else?
No, No,
Gotcha.
along with yourself, sir. Yeah.
I've sort of lost track, but I think I mentioned earlier, maybe before the gathering, that we should start planning emergency mitigation, emergency planning, so that we don't wind up with disasters. And as much as you can think about how little things like the maid doesn't come in, or your babysitter is sick, or you get sick and you can't take care, you can't, or your kids get sick and you can't get somebody to take care of, those are emergencies. Most people have, after having done that emergency several times, figured out some alternatives, and that makes them more resistant to that sort of thing becoming a disaster. And I think we should always try, whenever somebody suggests a disaster mitigation, we should try to think about how we can make that just a regular emergency preparedness thing we do, just like putting on your galoshes or taking an umbrella.
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And as a matter of fact, what you just said is really what Lori was talking about in terms of the safety and security outcome and output of what we're talking about, and getting citizens to do what you just said. Absolutely, fabulous.
Can only residents of Fairfax County sign up for these, or could Loudoun County residents sign up?
Sign up for what, ma'am?
Are
For
you
this
talking
event.
about signing up for the webinar?
For the webinars, and say like for Fairfax County alert. So I have a lot of relatives who live in the Midwest. I check the weather all the time for them to see if they're getting a lot of
Sure.
snow, or that's my question. Can people outside the area sign up for the classes and for the alerts?
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I, like you, do provide that service for my kids who are in colleges in different places, and I have their alerts, and I don't even live there. So yeah, you can absolutely do that. Absolutely.
Okay, thank
Yeah, you can look up where your relatives live as well, and sign up for the alerts there. I'm signed up for some alerts in Florida where my grandparents live, just because sometimes my grandma doesn't, always check her phone. So, I can check her location to see where she is, and make sure that I can get in touch with her. So she's aware, because she has unread text messages from 2017, but that's a bigger issue, right? But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where you, of course, we don't limit these to anyone from anywhere can join. The more the merrier. We do have up on our website every month, but we have a running list for the year of where we're going to be. If it's going to be in person, you'll see the address. If it's going to be virtual, you'll see the link to come. So, and I do try to put it in every month's newsletter so that what the upcoming topic is. So if there's any questions, or if you have suggestions that you have, please let us know.
I just found out this year, I went out to the internet, and there's something called, every state has it, it's 511. So and 511 is part of the of each state's internet address, but I could go out and see interstate, a visual of interstate I-74 to see if my sister's going to be able to get from Iowa to Illinois, what the roads are like. You can see the traffic lights. So each state that I've checked, West Virginia, Iowa, Maryland, and each state has one of those websites.
Absolutely. And they're very, very helpful too. Had folks consulted that, which was really, really up to date when the recent massive traffic backup snarl happened on 95, they could have been warned away from it, because that was completely up to date.
I also recommend that anybody living near the boundaries of Fairfax consider sharing these opportunities with their neighbors in Loudoun or Prince William or Arlington or wherever, just to share the wealth of knowledge and share ideas too.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, to that note, that's actually a really good segue, because coming up in the next couple months, we haven't put out an exact date yet, but we're going to be doing a disaster Jeopardy. So kind of a little bit of a different spin on our webinars and, you know, some more informational things. You know, it'll be a more interactive game. So we're going to be partnering with Manassas Park, the city of Manassas, and Prince William County to do that. So you definitely will see that cross posted, hopefully, between all of our jurisdictions. But we thought that it would be a really, you know, cool thing, you know, just to do. So disaster Jeopardy, really, it's going to be Jeopardy, but your disaster edition. So asking different questions and, you know, seeing who's able to answer those questions. So, and of course, there'll be prizes along with it that either we can mail to you or you can pick them up. So stay tuned for that. Well, awesome. Guys, I cannot thank you enough. I know that we've gone over about a half hour, but really this has been awesome. This was great interaction. I've seen quite a few people on here that haven't joined us in the past. So thank you so much for coming out, and we look forward to continuing to serve you. And if you have any suggestions, comments, questions, concerns, I'll drop my email in the chat. Or if you want to talk to one of our volunteers who presented to you tonight, I can always connect to you with them as well. So,
Courtney?
yes.
Oh, sorry, quick question.
Sure.
I have a son, he's interested in disaster response, emergency management. He's in college and was looking to volunteer this summer. I think he has a friend interested in it as well. What direction would you point him to?
Why don't you have him, why don't you email me and you can connect me with him. And I can give him all the different opportunities that we have in the county. But we also do have an internship program. If this is something he's interested in career-wise, we do host interns in the spring, the summer, and in the fall. So it's something that's really cool, and I can give you the information. We have a really great track record with our interns. We've actually hired, we've hired 2 of them that now work full-time in our office, but we have a lot of other interns that go on to work for the federal government and other localities as well.
Okay,
you might want to,
yeah,
ahead.
sorry. And to get, I'm not very good with this part. So I go to chat and then I'll see your email address.
Yeah, and it's Courtney.Arroyo
Yeah.
at fairfaxcounty.gov.
You might want to
Okay.
know that you've disabled copy from the chat, so it doesn't help. You'd have to transcribe from the chat.
Okay,
You
hold
can't
on.
just copy it out or anything like that.
I am so sorry about that. You know, I was wondering why I couldn't do that before. And you know what? That's not even something that I did. It's a county block that I can't even change. I'm really sorry about that.
I think I have it.
Okay. Yeah, and if not, you can always call our office and just ask for me. Or I can give you my phone number as well if you would like.
Oh, that would be great. Thanks.
Sure. It's 703
703
581
581
9230.
30.
And
Thanks.
don't worry,
Courtney.
I'm not giving out my personal cell phone. It's my work cell phone. I have it on me just about all the time. If I don't answer, leave a message and I will 100% call you back.
Okay, Courtney, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
And thanks,
Yeah.
everybody.
Rebecca, I saw you had a question about the recording. So yes, I do have the recording from last month as well. And we're just working on putting it up on the website. We've had to change a couple things on our website. So if you give us probably till the end of next week, I'll be able to have them up.
Okay, there was an attachment. I'm sorry, I didn't sign on until after you had already started. I don't even know if it was 15 minutes or a half hour or whatever it was.
No worries.
But it was saying something about on March 8th, there's going to be a tornado test or something.
Yes.
Did you guys talk about that already?
So we did briefly touch on it. There is going to be a tornado drill on March 8th. I will be sending out, I'm going to be the one sending it out. You'll get some more information, probably tomorrow or Friday. And then again on Monday before the actual test on Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah, just interested.
Yeah.
Thank you for holding this.
You get the newsletter?
I'm not sure how I got it, but I have it. Yeah, emergency
Perfect.
preparedness newsletter. Yes, I do.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, and we're gonna send the test out to all of the individuals who are signed up for the emergency preparedness newsletter. So you'll definitely get the information.
Great. Thank
And
you.
I'm so sorry, you guys probably hear my son in the background.